When it comes to Nvidia, most investors might be worried that, hey, look, there's going to be a slowdown in big tech investment in AI chip and AI infrastructure. But on today's episode, we are going to take a closer look at some evidence why that might not be the case. So let's get started. But before we go any further, make sure to hit the thumbs up, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and check out the pinned comment for my special link for my daily semiconductor newsletter, What the Chip Happened. All right, so today's episode is going to be a little bit different. Let me know what are your thoughts. And if I should do more episodes like this, I want to listen to a quick and kind of show you a quick clip from a recent podcast that I was listening to and kind of share my overall thoughts. I think this clip is going to be amazing for AI investors. And this is coming from the BG2 podcast. The link to the podcast will be down below. If you have a full hour and 30 minutes to listen to it, I highly, highly recommend watching it.
What are you hearing from the hyperscalers? I mean, they're all out there saying our capex is going up next year. We're building larger clusters. Is that in fact happening? Like, what's happening out there?
Yeah, so I think when you look at the street's estimates for capex, they're all far too low. Based on a few factors, right? So when we track every data center in the world, and it's insane how much, especially Microsoft and now Meta and Amazon and many others, right? But those guys specifically are spending on data center capacity. And as that power comes online, which you can track pretty easily if you look at all of the different regulatory filings and you satellite imagery, all these things that we do, you can see that, hey, they're going to have this much data center capacity, right?
Right.
It's
accelerating.
What are you going to fill in there, right?
Yeah.
It turns out you have to fill it up. You can make some estimates around how much power is each GPU, all in, everything, right? Satya said he's going to slow down that a little bit, but they've signed deals for next year rentals, right? In some of these cases, right?
And as part of the reason he said is he expects his cloud revenue in the first half of next year to accelerate because he said we're going to have a lot more data center capacity and we're currently capacity constrained. So
Dylan is a very smart guy. He is the lead analyst at Semi Analysis. And he kind of mentions that, hey, look, Wall Street capex expectations are way too low. And the reason he feels so confident about this is because he does two things. First, he looks at regulatory filings, right? And with his regulatory filings, which I wasn't aware of, you can kind of see what these data centers are requesting in forms of how much power they're going to use, how much power they're going to need, because I guess some form of infrastructure needs to be built around that data center. So you can kind of do reverse engineering or reverse math to say, look, there's this much power that this company or this data center is going to use. On average, X percentage of this data center power is used on GPUs alone. So with that form of thinking, he can kind of understand that, hey, look, NVIDIA's GPU spending or kind of data center GPU spending is going to grow dramatically. And we can see that based on Wall Street expectations, they are far too low for what's to come. So I think that was a very, very important point and obviously very bullish for the semiconductor companies, especially with NVIDIA, which dominates in this space. So I want to say the first fear here is should be broken, right? That it is possible NVIDIA in the upcoming year can definitely beat earnings expectations, right? Because if Wall Street is not expecting big tech to spend the amount of capital expenditure that Semi Analysis and Dylan is seeing, then that means that they're going to spend a lot more money. And if they're going to spend a lot more money, it means NVIDIA is going to have a lot more GPU and AI accelerator sales. So I think overall that's bullish, at least for the next year or so. Now, remember, things might have not always go up in a straight line. They might do some more spending in one quarter over another. And depending on when that quarter is, it could kind of create some turbulence over the stock price. So this is more kind of just evidence that in the long term, NVIDIA and AI spending is expected to continue to reach new levels. In the short term, it's not necessarily an answer. It's not saying that, hey, look, NVIDIA is going to go up forever. So very important to kind of determine that.
Again, going back to is scaling dead? Then why is Mark Zuckerberg building a 2 gigawatt data center in Louisiana?
Right.
Why is Amazon building these multi-gigawatt data centers? Why is Google? Why is Microsoft building multiple gigawatt data centers plus buying billions and billions of dollars of fiber to connect them together because they think, hey, I need to win on scale, so let me just connect all the data centers together with super high bandwidth so then I can make them act like one data center, right? Towards one job, right? So this is this whole is scaling over narrative falls on its face when you see what the people who know the best are spending on, right?
The second fear, and this kind of goes with the first fear, right? The first fear is that capital expenditure is going to slow down. And the reason for that is because there are many reports that scaling is that. And when scaling is when it comes to the training of AI. And Dylan, again, here kind of talks that, hey, look, while we don't know necessarily if this is exactly true, big tech players doesn't believe that. Because at the moment, even though they might not be able to scale one massive supercomputer, they're building kind of all these data centers all over the states and trying to buy a lot of fiber to be able to connect them together to make them seem like they're just one super cluster. So right now, it does seem like power constraint is definitely still a thing. And one of the ways to eliminate power constraint is unfortunately kind of an expensive route, but it's kind of the fiber route, right? This fiber route of connecting all these kind of data centers through optics, because at the end of the day, nothing is faster than light. So obviously that kind of communication kind of helps reduce a lot of the latency and makes it seem like all these data centers are going to be connected and be as one. So this is going to be very important. And I believe obviously there's going to be some opportunities. I necessarily don't purchase too much or focus my attentions in the fiber market, in the optics market, but it seems like there is an opportunity there. Now, I want to say this was just a few minute clip from this podcast, and this podcast was over an hour and 30 minutes long. I really did enjoy it. I think as an Nvidia investor, it's great to know that at least for 2025, we are expected to get some crazy capex spending, and that's obviously going to be bullish for companies like Nvidia and obviously their supply chain. Now, like I mentioned earlier on, this doesn't necessarily mean that it's always going to go up in a straight line. This market spending can fluctuate over quarters, so those fluctuation in quarters can create buying opportunities if we see a dip. This is more saying that in the long term, things are going to be good, at least for 2025. Now, obviously, there might be some other issues in 2026 or 2027, but that all is going to be in the hopes that AI continues to develop at rapid pace. And I think that's very crucial, right? This whole AI investment is relying on that AI continues to innovate at massive levels. Also, I thought it was pretty interesting how you can kind of do that reverse math to try to understand how much is going to be spent on GPUs or AI infrastructure by following the regulatory filings on how much power usage a data center is expected to see once it's built. And finally, the scaling law seems to not be dead. There just is different ways to go about the kind of scaling of a data center right now because of power constraints. It seems that the best route might be through going through fiber communications to make it seem like these various data centers. I hope you guys enjoy it. Take care. Have a good day and see you next time.